The saying might go that if there is a will, there is a way. But you won't find a will in Cleveland unless it's Will Brennan. And everybody's favorite joke, no cash in Cleveland.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's show is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app, use the promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Want to welcome everyone back to the show. For you, it's been a day. For us, it's been a few. It was nice to have that little mini break. It's the advantage of the counter programming and the off-season side of things with this is we were able to really kind of sit back and have a little bit of time and watch things kind of unwind in this postseason. But it is nice to be back. It is nice to be talking baseball. Justin, how are you doing this evening?
I'm just fine. There's no cash coming. Cleveland has no money, no cash.
Never had.
That's what I'm feeling.
Never,
right now.
Never will.
No.
They're cheap. I'll just do that for 30 minutes.
They won't even put any cash into their manager, if you will. No, they didn't have a choice in that one, which we said all along. They weren't going to have a choice in spending any money on Kevin Cash because I don't know. I've run out of puns. We're at the part of the offseason. We were discussing
Cash had no interest
topics.
In yeah, it's like let's just before anyone accuses us of something, let's just get to the point. We're not saying really that they are cheap. It's just that he didn't want to leave, and why would you want to leave? I know they keep getting bumped out of the first round of the postseason. If you read my mock, I think I mentioned it in the last show. It's like you had to move things around a bit because of not realizing some of the rules. Like I'm still learning with the new rules, and it's like looking at what Tampa could draft, and then looking at their stock minors and being like, "There's no end to this play." Like Tampa's in the situation Cleveland fans wish they were, which is the idea of like, "Oh, we have so many prospects and we have so many spots. So like you can trade to fill a spot, right? Like they're looking to fill 1 or 2 spots. Cleveland's looking to fill 7." There's a bit of a difference. That's why, I'll make a controversial statement. It's like, in some regards,
hot take alert.
Hot take alert. Listen, I am glad they signed Jose, but in some regards, it's actually kind of the last thing a team that isn't super close wants to do because it's better to get 5 to 6 potential pieces a la the Clevenger deal. Now, I'm glad they kept Jose. The fan in me is happy, but the building-wise, signing a smaller player into his 30s might not have been. Everyone loves that. Might not have been the smarter decision. But on the other side of it, like if you're a team like Tampa, like that is always a smart decision because Cleveland has a lot of holes. Tampa has a few. And this is, again, I'm glad they signed Jose. I am glad they signed Jose. I'll say that over and over again. It made me buy like 6 shirts because I find it's the first time I ever bought a shirt with a name on it because I felt comfortable a player was staying. But they're the team that's at that step. Cleveland's.
Did you check with John Morosi before you bought that shirt?
And what would Seattle trade, anyways, in that hypothetical deal? Like their minors has nothing close. Like their
Julio Rodriguez or bust.
Yeah, I mean it's like Jared Kelenic, who still had a lot of ups and downs last year, and already has burned through.
I'm still on that train.
I mean, I like Kelenic, but he's burned through like 2 to 3 years of team option because he's been up and down so much. That's the one danger with the nonlinear development. But again, I'm glad Jose is here. But this team in their current configuration needs like 7 different things, which is why I wish we had more opportunities to see what Jonathan Rodriguez could do this year instead of Cole Calhoun, or to see what George Valera, in spite of being ineffective and hurt and just dude is made of tissue paper, seeing what he could do. That's still been the biggest problem is the young players. They need them, but they don't like. Brian, I just did write-ups at Prospect Live for us in Angel Martinez and Brian Rocchio, and they were the most negative write-ups ever. You probably would read them and think these guys aren't prospects, but it's like Rocchio, he was so dreadful in the big leagues. It's like, what do you do? What do you trust? Like, I mean, he was across the board bad. Like, his K rate went from under 18 to 30. Like, I don't know. They have to figure out what these guys have at some point, and that's kind of the weird situation. I got really off topic with this, but yeah.
I don't think the Guardians have as many holes as you're saying personally, and I think we'll have that debate at a later time in the off season. Because
7 is high. Seven is hyperbole. It's me being
this is what we talked about with Zach when he was on talking about the managers. Like, this is still an attractive position for managers because there are some pieces in place with the roster. And I want to make one more Kevin Cash joke before we move on to other topics. But if Kevin Cash really wanted to manage the Guardians' best players, he would just wait for Cleveland to trade him there, right? Because Yandy Diaz and Junior Caminero, he doesn't need to come to Cleveland to manage Cleveland's best players. He can just wait until Tampa Bay trades Tobias Myers for Jose Ramirez.
Will we ever on the air address what you and I both heard as rumors on why they made that deal for Tobias Myers, or should we hint at it and then never mention that we kind of had some minor intel?
There's no real record of this. Like, there's little things that have come up. I talked about it with the Hellcats broadcast on my other podcast.
Go ahead and tell them what it is.
Guardians of the Future. It's all Guardians prospects, like 99% of the time, except for tomorrow's episode where things get a little bit wild. No, but like last year when and this is not 100% of who he is. Like, this is only little details that we know from the last couple of years. Like, this is in no way the entire truth or big picture of who he is. But like, there was a benches clearing brawl in the was it Charleston? I think not Charleston. Who is the Yankees low A team? I can't remember who it is at this point.
It's Scranton.
So Lynchburg was no,
I'm
sorry, Tampa Bay is low 18. I meant Tampa Bay. I think Charleston is the Yankees. Anyway, whoever it is, Junior Caminero was on that team, and they were facing the Hellcats in the first round of the playoffs, and there was a benches clearing brawl, and Junior Caminero was kind of supposedly at the helm of that brawl. So, like, I think some of that played into it. I don't think that's the whole story, but I do think some of that. You don't trade a 19-year-old like Junior Caminero based off of just a few. Like, they took on Cleo Watson, right? They just took on Cleo Watson. Maybe that was their way of making up for trying to make up for the Caminero trade.
Vaguely reminiscent of Francisco Mejia as well. Like, it's that weird thing where that's why the Cleo Watson is maybe a nice trade where they're like finally not going to just like get scared at the slightest difference.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, we don't really know these people in person. We hear some stories, and it's not always the full picture of who they are. But yeah, he was involved in a benches clearing brawl, that he had a hand in escalating things, and that might have played into it some to that extent. So we'll see how that plays out. He was 19 at the time. I'm 30.
I was 34, really dumb.
I was the most mature person in the world. Yeah. So. But yeah, that's part of what goes into it. But yeah, so if Cleveland Chase DeLauder, future Tampa Bay Ray, because he gets the ball too hard, right? So he's hitting the crap out of the ball in Arizona, and Cleveland needs another fifth starter that's never going to make it to the majors. So that's where Kevin Cash is going to get all of his best players anyway.
Or it's just going
why come to Cleveland?
Kyle Manzardo is going to win the Rookie of the Year, earn him an extra draft pick, and be the best rookie first baseman in the franchise's history. To make up for all these deals, right? That's how this works out. All that luck has to teeter the other way, and Manzardo is going to turn into mini Pronk out there. All the on-base skills, none of the power, or half the power.
He is hitting the ball hard in Arizona, I will say. I had someone come into my Twitter feed the other day who was like, "Really, we're hyping up AFL prospects?" I'm like, "Okay, first of all, if you've followed me or listened to anything." Right, but if you listen to the podcast or if you've seen either of us post on Twitter, yes, the AFL comes with a serious grain of salt because of the environment and the lack of competitive pitching at times. But exit velocity is exit velocity. It doesn't. You hit the ball hard in Arizona, hit the ball hard in Alaska. It's still a hard hit ball, and Kyle Manzardo's hitting the ball hard. So yeah, Cleveland should be. That's a good thing. Look at if you're watching the playoffs at all. Look what's going on. Teams are knocking pitchers out in the first 3 innings because they're hitting the ball over the fence. You can't win playoff games when Aaron Nola or Spencer Strider makes a mistake and you hit a single. When those guys make mistakes, you have to hit the ball over the fence. And If Kyle Manzaro can hit the ball 108 miles an hour, it doesn't matter if it's in Arizona or Cleveland, because when you hit the ball 108 miles an hour, it's going to do good things. That translates. Like, exit velocity does translate. I know, for years we talked about Yandy Diaz's launch angle, and that's an issue too, but that's not the case for Manzardo. But like Manzardo, I think the home run he hit the other day in Arizona was like 464 feet. Like, that's crazy. That probably had something to do with the Arizona environment. But what doesn't have any impact over there is how hard he hits the ball. So he hit the ball 108 miles an hour. And if there were any justice, yes, Kevin Cash would have been the Guardians manager to make up for the Junior Caminero trade. He's not, but that we said all along that wasn't going to happen because it wasn't a situation worth leaving, and Tampa Bay wasn't going to let him leave. There is news on another manager who we talked about earlier this week who is not coming to Cleveland. So we'll talk about him and what that means for the Guardians coming up. You cannot put money on, not on Sleeper. There are probably apps you can put money on to bet on who the Guardians' next manager is. But if you want to make some really easy money, 100 times your money, in fact, use Sleeper. The middle playoffs are here. You can still bet on Ronald Acuna. I would definitely bet on Yordan Alvarez next round against Rangers pitching on home runs. I almost had a good tweet tonight about Yordan Alvarez. I haven't put it out yet, but pick more or less on stats for starts like that on homers, hits, strikeouts. I'm definitely going to put more than a home run or two on Yordan Alvarez in the ALCS. And you can get 100 times your payout on Sleeper. If you get your picks right, you can win big. And if you use our code Locked On when you are using the Sleeper app, you're going to get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Something. Listen to playoffs on your XM app. I don't know. I've run my course on that one.
I mean, we're gonna. I know. Talk about the Orioles. The way things are going. Speaking of XM radio, we might be talking about the Dodgers as they're getting ready to maybe be swept out of this one as well, aren't they?
I know. That's crazy. That lineup is as good as Atlanta's, and they're going home. It's their pitching.
Their offense has only scored 2 runs the first 2 games. They currently have 0.
True.
So the pitching has been terrible. Bobby Miller got lit up. Lance Lynn got lit up. But
Brandon Kershaw got lit up.
Yeah, Brandon Pafad, or however you say his name. Remember we talked Fad? It's like, remember we talked about him getting absolutely destroyed? Through 4 1/3 innings, he has allowed 2 hits. That's it. Like, he is facing Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and JD Martinez and Max Muncy and Will Smith. I don't care about the rest of the lineup. That's a good lineup. Just those guys at the top, and they aren't doing crud. They are doing no work.
Did not have errors. Hey, you get to see Christian Walker play a little more. That's good. That's what we wanted.
My number one trade target last offseason.
I know.
But it makes sense they didn't trade him now, doesn't it? On their way to the NLCS with
can see why, right? But at least you can see why we were interested in him.
Yeah. And another thing, I just want to point out too before I move on from that, Christian Walker, just point out again, is another player who was cut by multiple teams. Like, no one gets it right the first time. There's a lot of weirdness in baseball. Sometimes you got to be lucky. Sometimes it takes guys longer. And hopefully Cleveland can be lucky this offseason in finding the next Christian Walker, the next JD Martinez. Speaking of someone else in that series who was cut before he landed somewhere.
Yep, got to be patient. That's what happens in baseball. So I think I joked. I sent this to you last week or a couple days ago. Bob Nightingale was saying that Will Venable was the favorite to take over for Terry Francona in Cleveland, and that was yesterday. Today, if you want to believe a John Morosi rumor. So yeah, take this with a grain of salt. But John Morosi says that Will Venable is staying with Texas and not going to leave for a managerial opening. So Bob, I don't know. This is an interesting battle of who's going to get rumors wrong here, because Bob Nightingale's got a great track record of just goofing stuff up, and
we said it.
Talk about the Jose.
When Nightingale said he's the favorite, we're like, mock him off the list.
Yeah, we did. But then the guy who's disputing it also said that maybe the Mariners could trade for Jose Ramirez. So I don't know. We'll see.
These are your national media.
Yeah, it's.
And then you got John Smoltz on TV and Adam Wainwright hitting baseball on the air. You got guys covering it who are talking.
Getting things wrong.
I can't. We need like Zach in a national position. I would hate to lose him, but it's like that's what we need. We need more. Right. We need Ina Saros being on the announce crew for these games. We need Like the people who are
yes.
passionate and interesting and knowledgeable out there talking. That's what we need. We don't need more former player. Like I guarantee there are former players who would do it better than Smoltz or even what we've seen with Wainwright so far. It's like, not to say that former players can't. Doug Glanville was pretty good, I thought, in his role in limited time. But we also remember the years of the terror and horror of Joe Morgan on Sunday Night Baseball, which might have been the worst announcer in my lifetime. Like, it was maybe the greatest second baseman ever, but man, I know I'm going to have a subset of our audience mad at me, but I thought Joe Morgan was always the worst part of Sunday Night Baseball.
So yeah, I love John Miller for sure. Yeah. Yeah, there are good ones out there. I mean, there was like a whole bunch of people out there who were obviously retweeting Pitching Ninja, talking about the difference in sweepers. Brent Rooker is doing a good job on Twitter explaining stuff. He might as well be a retired player because he plays for Oakland, right? I know some people on social media were talking about trading for him, and I have different thoughts on that. We can get into it later in the offseason. So, yeah, I don't know. Will Venable. Maybe Will Brennan will stay the only Will in Cleveland next year. I did think Will Venable had a good shot, though. Yeah. I thought he is well thought of around baseball. It sounds like people think that he is going to be a manager someday, and he's only 40, so he still has plenty of time. And he did have the relationship with Mike Chernoff, as we talked about last episode. I don't know. We'll see. The Rangers he can't even interview yet, so because the Rangers are moving on to the next round, so you can't even interview him yet. So I don't know. Maybe it's not over. I don't know. Maybe there's still a chance to interview, but it is interesting that if he takes his ring out of the hat when it sounds like there's going to be a lot of openings this offseason, right? There is Cleveland. What other openings are there? There's a managerial. Milwaukee might have an opening. We know the Mets have an opening.
Boston.
Boston. No, Alex Cora is staying.
Oh, that's right. It's his manager or the GM.
San Francisco's got an opening.
Yes.
So there are multiple
weirdly
places.
Doesn't, in spite of their craziness.
They may. There's no guarantee there. If I were Bob Melvin, I might. I mean, their roster's so good, it might be hard to leave, but it sounds like a messy place right there. This is what we always say. Could be better. Look at San Diego's got a ridiculous treasure trove of stars, and they've had a good system, and they can't get it right in terms of culture either. So that just tells you that how many variables go into building a good baseball team. And sometimes you have to be lucky, but you have to have the right culture, and sure seems like San Diego doesn't. So all good it does them to have, Soto and Tatis and Machado and spend all this money on Xander Bogaerts. And
can we talk about how weird that was on one level? Like, if you're going to go spend the money, why Xander Bogaerts, a player on the decline who wasn't top 3 at his position? Like, that's spending money because you have money to spend. Yeah.
The money was burning the hole in the pocket of the owner.
Not smartly spending.
Spending money is great. Like, that's what you want. These people are billionaires. Like, let them write the checks, for God's sakes. But, yeah, that's the thing. That's the argument here, too, in Cleveland is, like, if they're going to spend money, spend it smartly. And you can argue that Cleveland doesn't spend money smartly. That is the one issue here. Like, you can complain about the payroll, but when given the opportunity, Edwin Encarnacion worked out, and I'm trying to think of another free agent besides that worked out.
David DeLucci, Nick Fisher, Michael
Good night.
Bourne.
If we talk about Michael Lucci, let me tell you, 20-year-old Justin was a very angry baseball fan when the Michael Lucci platoon was around. I would not have been selected to co-host this podcast because it would have been I'd have been fired very quickly. Let's be honest. Do you think that the money would be well spent on a certain relief pitcher that pitched for the Guardians very briefly last year, Jeff? Should we discuss that in just a minute?
Yeah, and it's on point for the month of October and Halloween.
Oh, it sure is.
Oh, I'm never good on point with things because I'm used to our old BD Bop music. Jase Medical. Right here is my Jase case. Let me show you again if you missed it. It's a nice little case. It's got 5 different types of antibiotics in there, and it's giving you the power and the ability to get life-saving antibiotics. And we had one of our other co-hosts tell us that their girlfriend is a nurse who said it's actually a really good deal on these antibiotics if you're buying them separately. So you're getting a good deal on those antibiotics, and it's a way to take control. I'm not sure how much you can tell that my sinus is currently a disaster zone that would scare away even the likes of Michael Myers. But, I have not. I'm waiting for it to get to the point where I'm waking up in the middle of the night in pain, and then I'm going to use my Jase case to treat it with antibiotics, because that's the only way my sinus pressure, gets better. Right now, you can get $20 off life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's Jase Medical. That's JASE medical.com.
Phillies and Braves have another game to play. It looks like the Dodgers and Diamondbacks may not, and the Rangers and Astros are going to meet in the ALCS. So listen to that on your Sirius XM app. The reliever we're talking about, of course, is Reynaldo Lopez, and some people think that there's a chance Cleveland might make a run at keeping Reynaldo Lopez. I think I've already said on the podcast I wanted to keep Reynaldo Lopez next year before I had seen him pitch in person in terms of his entrance music, because I thought he was a good reliever, especially for Cleveland. But again, the guy uses Halloween as his entrance music as a reliever. I think that's fantastic. And if you're going to get to the playoffs, play in October, I would want that too. So he's worth the money on that alone. But do you think that Cleveland is capable of finding a contract that is good for him and good for them? Because I think, as we know, signing free agent relief pitching is not a very good venture. And we just said Cleveland, the last relief pitcher Cleveland signed, not named Brian Shaw, because Brian Shaw is in his own category. I'm not going to count him here. Was Boone Logan, and boy, that was a great signing that I would love to forget about.
So it's here's the thing I'll say with Lopez, 29 years old, so technically, but he was a starter up until age 25, so he's been in this relief role only a few years. Up until this year, his K rate was never over 9. This year, it's at 11. He does walk a few guys. He can be a little home run prone. His FIPS have kind of been all over the place. With the White Sox this year, he was really good. Or I'm sorry, last year at the White Sox, he was utterly fantastic. This year, he was close to league average. I think that's why they feel like they can get him. I think he brings kind of a different look to the bullpen with his pitch mix than what they have. He can give you multi-innings in that relief role as a recent starter. And I think he is a guy, he was good for 2 WAR this year, which is very good for a reliever. But I don't think he is the guy who's going to generate as much on the open market. And if they liked him here and they thought he was a good part of the chemistry of the team, I think it makes sense.
I've heard good things about him in Chicago. I saw when he was traded from Chicago to LA and LA to Cleveland that he was a good dude. So it sounds like he's a pretty good teammate. Be interested to see if he wants to split up from Lucas Giolito, if they continue to be a package deal for whoever wants to sign them in the offseason. Well, I'm curious to see it.
Go ahead. Oh. Well, I was just going to make a joke. We know that they won't go back to the White Sox because the other fun media reports of the day were the White Sox only want to sign former Royals because, the Royals have been so successful.
Oh, that sounds good. Is that a Chris Getz thing? Is that why? Chris
Getz wants to add Whit Merrifield and Salvador Perez. So they're going to bring in all those old over-the-hill. So don't worry about the White Sox next year is what we're saying.
Isn't there an old saying, don't stop your enemies from making a mistake? Isn't that a saying somewhere?
Probably. It should be.
Don't stop the White Sox from doing that.
Don't stop the White Sox from never changing. As much as, listen, I am looking forward to new ownership in Cleveland, but I will take Dolan every day of the week over Reinsdorf. That is one advantage we do have. Reinsdorf is he's in that.
They've got a ring over there. They do have a ring though.
Yeah, by
2005.
All those pieces.
Hey, that was a pretty good team.
It was a good team, but they got those. A lot of those, Jermaine Dye was kind of on a rebound contract, I want to say at the time, and some of those other central pieces. Esteban Loaiza.
They had athletic supporter king Juan Uribe, of course. Can't forget Juan Uribe and Mark Burley. That was a better team than I thought. Even though I thought 90 or the 05 Indians were very good too.
It was a really good team, but it was also then they quickly fell apart, as is the way with the White Sox, because ownership has never. They were one of 3 teams that has never given $100 million contract.
Yeah, the Benintendi deal. Yeah, the Benintendi deal was their biggest one. Before that, it was Encarnacion. I'll be curious to see what happens with Lopez. I do like the pitch mix. He misses enough bats. And the thing you have to continue to watch in the postseason, and Cleveland should know this very well, no matter who their manager is. I don't think – I guarantee Chris Anthony and Mike Chernoff are very aware because of 2016. Like, you do not get far in the playoffs without a good bullpen. Yes, a good rotation saves your bullpen, but you're still going to pull starters.
Look at the Twins.
You're not – yeah, I mean, and I love Joe Ryan. I think Joe Ryan's a great starter, but, man, he wasn't the same in the second half as he was in the first half. Things went very bad there. So you need –
well, it was the bullpen. He only pitched 2 innings. Then, Brock Stewart was okay. Caleb Thielbar got lit up. They had to rely on him. I know,
but they removed Joe – I mean, they got – I know people are going to complain about moving pitchers too early and all this stuff, but, like, you're not going to do a lot of I don't care what anybody complains about. The numbers are going to tell you, and yes, there needs to be some feel to this. You need to see, you need to be able to read the hitter's swings and what they're picking up on. So you need smart pitching. You need a smart pitching coach. If your plan is like there was that story from Philadelphia or this postseason about, I think it was game 1, Ranger Suarez, right? Rob Thompson said before the game that, hey, you're only going to go about 4 innings. I'm going to end the bullpen, be ready to come in on command, like. Be prepared to be called early from the bullpen and be prepared that Ranger Suarez is going to go very long. That sometimes that is the best plan. And again, if Ranger Suarez is going out there and guys are just missing the ball completely and he looks totally in control, like, yeah, you can read that. And it's a decision whether you're darned if you do, darned if you don't, like the Blake Snell thing. But it doesn't matter whether you pull your starter in the 3rd inning of a playoff start or the 6th inning. You still need a very deep bullpen. So all that is to say, I think as far as free agent relievers go, like I can't imagine he's not getting anything less than a 3-year deal because there is enough success in his past and enough good stuff there that I think he's going to demand a decent contract. But
agreed. I
would still be very interested in retaining him. Like I said, the Guardians have not always spent their money in the best places, and it would be a big risk, especially when you have other needs to address. But like I just said, you don't win in the postseason without a deep, deep bullpen. And, we talked about the bullpen having issues this year. Like Class A, some overuse. I think some of the new rules played into that. You still feel good about him. You still feel good about Henches. I still think you feel fine about Stefan. I think there are some hiccups there to figure out. But outside of that, like everything, there's still a lot of question marks in the bullpen anyway. And I would not be mad about Reynaldo Lopez jogging out to the Halloween theme.
Yeah, I will say
55 times next year.
Looking at the list, it's like, okay, so Josh Hader is obviously the name everyone knows. And then it's like Craig Kimbrell, Nick Martinez, Trevor May, Kenyon Middleton, Wandy Peralta, Chapman, Will Smith, and then, Lopez. Nope. So that's not a great list. So he might end
they should sign Will Smith. Obviously, they should sign Will Smith.
We're not going to talk about Will Smith on the show.
I want all the Will Smiths. I want the catch.
No Will Smith discussions. The Orioles. Do we think the Orioles are going to need pitching after how things went this postseason? I think it is something we will definitely have to revisit after they got obliterated. The other question, though, I know you brought up pitching, is like, is there a world where they sell Santander this offseason because they've already said they can't re-sign their young talent?
Yeah, you've already got an owner who has a front office that developed a fantastic farm system, and he's already like doing the enjoy them while they're here line. Like,
yeah,
like you're already saying, well, we're not going to sign Gunnar Henderson or Radley Rush. We're not. I think he was making a point. He was going to say they're not going to sign all of them.
Yeah,
but gotta love the surprise year. Not the surprise year, but the Orioles system finally arrived this year, and the owner's already like, well, enjoy it. Like, could you imagine Paul Dolan in 2015 when Francisco Lindor made his debut, and that was the year he was like, enjoy him. Like, okay, at least he waited until, 2018 when everybody kind of realized he was not staying.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I know we don't really have the full time to dive into it, but it's like with that team, with, the weirdness of Ryan O'Hearn, with, Ryan Mountcastle, with Kjerstad, with Colton Cowser, with all these guys coming, I think there is a world where I don't know what the cost is, but I think Santander could be got. I will just go ahead and say that. I think there's a world where they look to move a young player in, get away from him being in year 6. And if he has a year like he had this past year, if you're let's say Cleveland, and you trade for him, there's a chance you might net a draft pick in a year. So,
yeah, Santander is not a bad fit because this is one of the things we'll get into later in the offseason. We talk about additions and how the outfield alignment is going to work, because obviously that's the biggest need in the offseason.
Depending
Santander
how you
works. Yeah. I think Santander works because he's a free agent at the end of 2024. And unless you are bringing in through a trade somebody who is like a long-term piece, Santander makes the most sense. Although depending on what you give up too and how committed you are to that trade, you don't want to block Chase the Lauder. You don't want to block any of your minor league guys. Like if you bring in a Santander, that's fine because at the most he's here for 1 year and you can move on if one of your prospects pushes through. And at the best, he gives you a great year, and you parlay that into a draft pick next year.
Yeah, like I don't know exactly how much more than Quantrill, or even if it'd be something that they'd do more than Santander. But Santander for Quantrill, I think, is just interesting for both sides to discuss due to Baltimore's depth. And the other thing with Cleveland, honestly, is Santander's a bad defender. But again, I'm not advocating more Miles Straw in center field, though I have a feeling it's probably going to be more Miles Straw in center field. But if you have Straw and Quan, that also helps make up for the deficits of a terrible right fielder. I'm trying to find a bright side in what I feel like is going to unfortunately happen. I'm trying to always look on the bright side of life.
I don't know that Quantrill moves the needle for Baltimore for that. Like, I agree that's a fair price. We got to move on. We got to go here. But, for what we just saw happen in Baltimore, they're pitching in the playoffs. Like, Quantrill's not a difference maker for them in the playoffs. I think they need to find I think they need Shane Bieber. They don't need Cal Quantrill.
Yeah,
Cal Quantrill's fine, but they need a Shane Bieber or the guy who used to be Shane Bieber.
And I know one of our everydayers mentioned this idea before, and I kind of poo-pooed it, but now I'm like, stopgap might work. We want to thank you all of our everydayers. Rate and review, download daily. It helps. We appreciate all of you tuning in